Hey guys, welcome back to Chapter in Ash. There are some books out there that don't just teach you history, they get under your skin. Now I say get under your skin in the sense that they're not dramatic, they're not necessarily sensational, none of these books are, but the events inside of them are so brutal, deplorable, sad, and harrowing in some cases that you just can't stop thinking about them. So today we're going to talk about some of the darkest, most harrowing, disturbing history books that I have ever read. These are the ones that made me question what humans are capable of, for better and certainly for worse. They're uncomfortable, they're devastating, this is your trigger warning, but they're also very important. We can't forget about these things that happened in history. Not all of these will be strictly, atrocities that happened in history. Some of them will be personal tales as well. And honestly, most of these stories hit harder than fiction ever could. So if you're ready, today we're going to dive into the top 8 books that show the true and terrifying side of human tragedy. Coming in at number 8 is Alive by Piers Paul Reed. Now, as I just mentioned, not all of these are going to be about one massive horrific event having to do with, world events, World War II, etc. There'll be plenty of those on the list. But I also personally really love tales of perseverance and also tales of tragedy around, awful things that happened in a vacuum, in a small situation, right? And Alive is certainly about one of those horrific accidents. It's the true story of the 1972 Uruguayan rugby team whose plane crashed in the Andes, leaving survivors stranded for 72 days in freezing conditions, with no food, with no shelter, and ultimately forced to make unthinkable choices. This is your cannibalism warning.
Cuando no tenés comida, te estás muriendo.
Si no comemos, nos vamos a morir.
¿Comer qué?
This is a survival that stripped in its rawest form, basically, right? This is starvation, like I said, cannibalism. This is frostbite, mental collapse, watching friends die, and becoming food is awful and horrific as that is to even say out loud. It's one of the most psychologically and morally disturbing true stories that I've ever read. But it's also incredibly motivating, and it shows the strength and the perseverance of the survivors and ultimately of one individual who really did a ton of work to get the survivors rescued. Listen, I respond to books that explore what humans can be capable of. Alive hits that emotional note for me and then some. It's really unbearable clarity in terms of the human psychology in the depths of depravity, right? Brutality, hope, horror, and perseverance really in the Alive book. Honestly, guys, this might be one of my personal just top recommendations overall. Such a good read. It's harrowing. It's awful. But man, it comes through at the end. I found myself moved in a positive way. And it also makes, same thing with all these books, it kind of makes what you're going through in your life seem a little bit less important and significant, meaning your worries, your concerns, your stressors, your anxiety, right? Now, the survivors later said that the worst part wasn't eating the dead. It was the moment they realized that they weren't being rescued and they had no choice but to save themselves because they hunkered down for quite a while just waiting. But like I said, 72 days, and they weren't rescued because somebody found them. They're rescued because somebody went and found somebody to find them. Coming at number 7 is Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. Now, Jon Krakauer actually came and kind of gave a little speech to my school back in the day when I was at high school. So this is a long, long time ago. I like this book even more than Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. This is accounting the 1996 Mount Everest disaster in which 8 climbers died but during a brutal, brutal storm. It was the deadliest season ever on Everest up till that point, and the book uncovers the commercialization of the mountain and really the moral failures that led to the loss of life. This one was an incredibly disturbing but also I can't say enjoyable read, but this got me into a bunch of mountain disasters and mountaineering books. It's an easy read, a subject matter aside. But anyway, death at 28,000 feet is slow, it's disorienting, and frankly, it's cruel. You read the firsthand accounts of the people turning back too late, right? Walking past dying climbers on their journey, and the horrifying mental fog as well that makes survival almost impossible on Mount Everest. Now, I went on to climb actually 48 mountains after I read this book, but I did so with a great sense of caution. Anyway, this resonates deeply with me. I like to explore ambition. I like human fragility, right? Hence all the books on this channel and all the topics, the dark topics on this channel. And I like the limits of endurance as well. This book is disturbing, though, because it shows that even the strongest, most capable people can break instantly when they make the wrong choices. That's Into Thin Air at number 7 by Jon Krakauer. Coming in at number 6 is King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. This book was a surprising read for me because I had no idea about King Leopold II's exploitation of the Congo Free State in the late 1800s. Basically, tens of millions of Africans were murdered through sheer atrocities and flat-out killing, but also through forced labor, through starvation, and through mutilation in pursuit of rubber and ivory and riches for King Leopold and the country of Belgium. The crazy thing about this one, guys, is it's really one of the greatest humanitarian crises in modern human history, right? It really is. But it's really one of the least taught. I didn't learn anything about this in school, in university, nothing. But children had their hands removed for failing to meet their rubber quotas, right? Entire villages were wiped out just to boost profit. That was it. It was not only, it was the Congo, but it was basically turned into the personal penal colony and worse of King Leopold II. I appreciate books that unearth, at least for me, and challenge my understanding of the world, especially as it pertains to our colonial legacy, which is almost always awful, no matter where you look in the entire world. This one forces you to confront the brutality hidden beneath Europeans' civilizations, especially at the time. I mean, this one is so dark, guys, that it goes into detail how the Belgian overseers of these these forced labor camps, had to provide a severed hand for every single bullet they used. They had to come back and show an actual hand to prove that the bullet wasn't wasted. That's how deplorable this book is. Again, that's King Leopold's Ghost, coming in at number 6. Coming at number 5 is The Deerfield Massacre by James Swanson. This is a much lesser known book than the others here on the list. A recent read of mine because I actually grew up near where this took place in Deerfield, Massachusetts. So this happened in 1704. A French and native coalition raided a frontier village in Deerfield, Massachusetts, killing and kidnapping nearly half of the entire town, and then marching all the survivors miles and miles and miles through snow. This is a very disturbing book. It goes into great detail from the survivors' accounts on what actually happened that day and what happened subsequently after the raid as well. It's not just a massacre, far from it. It's a story of family separation, frozen bodies all over the trail, cultural clashes as well, and a brutal test of human endurance on the march that the survivors had to go through. Children had to watch their parents die. Mothers carried infants and froze in their arms. It's horrific. It's horrific, but of course it's all true. I'm drawn to stories where humanity is tested under extreme conditions. That will become very apparent if it's not already here, right? Deerfield is a window into early colonial life, how tragic it could be, how precious life could be, and the survival rates were razor thin then. Many of the kidnapped children never returned because they were fully assimilated completely into the native tribes and refused to go back home after some of the surviving family members actually did track them down, sometimes decades later. They were all fully assimilated. They didn't even talk, and most of them couldn't talk to the rest of their families, which makes everything even more tragic. That's The Deerfield Massacre at number 5. Coming in at number 4 is Empire of the Summer Moon by S.C. Gwynne. I've talked about this book a lot here on the channel already. I think this is the 3rd video I've mentioned it, and for good reason. I really, really enjoyed this one, guys. If you have any interest in Native American history, want why not start with the rise and fall of the Comanche Empire, the most powerful Native American tribe in the American West. And this follows the story of Cynthia Ann Parker, who is a kidnapped settler who is fully assimilated into the Comanche life and wanted never to return, right? So really some echoes of the Deerfield Massacre book that we just spoke about as well. This one, the reason I love the book so much is it's not trying to shove any grand message or moral, preach to you either way, no matter, it's showing the brutality of all sides, especially during this colonial time, right? The book is unflinching about violence, a lot of disturbing violence here, a lot of disturbing massacres of children on both sides. And again, that's what I like about it. Comanche raids, frontier warfare. There were torture practices on both sides, scalping on both sides, captivity and revenge killings on all sides. It reveals the brutality of the frontier without like that Hollywood filter like you see in so many Westerns, especially back in the day, but even modern, right? It's raw, unvarnished American history, and I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed this book. I gravitate towards it because it's truth over mythology, right? And I appreciate the nuance as well that this book takes, as well as the care. Basically, these complex situations, there is no easy answer at the end of the day. There's just brutality, right? So again, if you're looking to learn anything about the Comanches, or if you haven't read anything on Native Americans, this is a great book to start, because I can promise you it's not going to get any better than this. That's The Empire of the Summer Moon, coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is Bloodlands by Timothy Snyder. Yeah, I'm sure a few of you guys out there were probably waiting for this one to be mentioned, because this is the quintessential dark and disturbing history book if there ever was one, right? This covers the Bloodlands, which is the area between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, right? Modern day Poland, Ukraine, Belarus as well, the Baltics, and over 14 million citizens, not soldiers, but citizens, were systematically murdered between 1933 and 1945. Now, Timothy Snyder, the author here, he meticulously documents the starvation campaigns, the execution gangs, the gulags, and honestly, just the genocides that most history classes, they don't touch. I remember back in my history class, man, I sometimes think of, granted, it's been a long time, 25 years for yours truly or whatever, but God, we didn't learn anything about reality. I felt like, looking back, I feel like a lot of what I was taught was just centuries of propaganda, put in an education format. Anyway, Bloodlands. It is it's awful, but it's so unbelievably important. Like I said, Snyder meticulously researched this. This is 14 million civilians murdered, and it's done in a very thoughtful and a very meticulous, but also a very brutal way in terms of the recounting of these events. He doesn't hide behind any abstractions. That is Snyder. You're forced to confront deliberate mass murder at an industrial scale, committed by Hitler and by Stalin as well. There's no comfort. There's no heroes in this book. There's no justification, no redemption in this book. Just human beings being crushed by stupid and backwards ideologies. I appreciate books that ultimately and fundamentally shift how you see the world. And man, if Bloodlands doesn't do that for you, I don't know what will. It really does reframe World War II as not a battle of politics and geopolitics on the global scale.
7 women had been machine gunned from the air while digging potatoes. Beside one mother's body, a stunned child waited for what might happen next.
It really goes beyond that, and it does in a very harrowing way. It covers World War II as an overlapping of atrocities that destroyed millions of lives ultimately, and that's really that's the tragedy and also the truth in World War II. So that's Bloodlands, coming in at number 3. Coming at number 2 is The Indifferent Stars Above by Daniel James Brown. Now, personally, this is my favorite book on the entire list, my strongest recommendation on the entire list. Even though it's dark and unthinkable, I don't think it's quite as dark and unthinkable as the number 1 entry. That's why I have it at number 2, even though it's my favorite personally. This is an incredible book, and not many people talk about it. It's about the Dahmer Party, right? So it was deeply researched, and frankly, it is beautifully written about the Donner Party, a group of pioneers trapped in the Sierra Nevada mountains in 1846 who faced starvation, death, madness, and cannibalism, right? I think that's what the Donner Party is synonymous with, is cannibalism. But it's about so much more than that. And it, like I said, it's written so beautifully where you start this book out really getting to know the party members and also putting yourself in their pioneer lives, kind of understanding the naivete of their journey and what they're about to embark on, knowing that it's going to end in disaster as well. You have that kind of underlying, I don't even want to say suspense, but it's almost that undercurrent of something really horrific is about to happen that really permeates the entire book for me. You watch families slowly realize they're going to die, right? Bodies freeze where they fall. People are eating bark. People are eating leather. Eventually they're eating, again, their dead family members or companions. They try to avoid, obviously, direct family members. He writes this with such emotional intimacy, making every loss feel very personal to me. Oh man, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about this book, honestly. This is the kind of history I love. It's human, it's vulnerable, it's emotional, it's disturbing, it's devastating, really, you know? It's not for gore and shock, despite the cannibalism and stuff like that. It's people trying to survive against all odds. That is The Indifferent Stars Above, coming in at number 2, high recommendation. Coming in at number 1, by far, is The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang. This one, going back to what history doesn't teach you in school, this was on the list, right? I certainly never knew about this until I was an adult, and I sought this out and researched it myself. There's so many things, by the way. I don't mean to, just pick on one country or several countries in this video. I could do a follow-up with, the My Lai massacre as well. I haven't found a good book on that, but there's so many atrocities committed by almost every nation in the world at this point. Anyway, back to the point at hand. This is a landmark work and is so disturbing. It's so difficult to read, but it's so important. It chronicles the 1937 invasion of Nanjing, right before World War II, by the Japanese. So they invaded a town of Nanjing. Soldiers committed mass murder, mass rape, unthinkable torture, unimaginable cruelty against a civilian population that had absolutely no way of escaping, no way of getting out. They were isolated. This is one of the darkest books, if not the darkest book ever written. It leaves you feeling really empty that human beings could do this at scale. It wasn't just 1 or 2 soldiers, it was hundreds of soldiers. And Chang, writing this book, does not look away at all, does not try to sugarcoat anything. I mean, I even hesitate to even say out loud some of the things detailed in this book, but, some of the memories that stay with me, unfortunately, are babies being thrown into the air and caught on bayonets, mass executions by machine guns, mass rape, forced incest, detailed, everything, a complete breakdown of humanity inside this major city. This book forces you to acknowledge what humans are capable of when empathy totally disappears, right? I gravitate books towards this, but they're very difficult, right? It takes unimaginable and disgusting truths head on. There is no respite. But this one also speaks to my value of honesty and integrity over comfort. And I think if I could say anything about this book, that would be what it entails. You're forced to confront the truth, the reality. And I think it's important. This is not for everybody. None of these books are going to be for everybody. But I honestly think it's super important to consume and read, or at least familiarize yourself with events like this. Because I think that educating yourself on these atrocities outlined in many of the books that we talked about today, I really do feel like that's what, at scale, that's what can prevent us from going that far in the future. I really do believe that. So anyway, guys, those are 8 books that I found their history, but they're darker and more disturbing in some cases than any fiction that I've ever read. Guys, thanks for watching till the end of the video. Much love, and as always, take care, guys.